So welcome back to See the Stories on the 3-hour news show. We are still in discussion with advocate Patriani Paramita Mulia regarding violence against women from the legal perspective. So before the break, I asked you about the perimeter, the limitations of a man of doing things that constitute violence, right? Sometimes we men, we don't understand and we don't know the limitation, the perimeter. Oh, this is constitutes violence and this one is actually not. So what is actually when it comes to verbal violence, what constitutes verbal violence? And when it comes to physical violence, okay, slapping or maybe hair pulling is of course physical violence, right? But what is the limitation in that? So let's talk about verbal violence first.
Right. I think when it comes to physical violence, it's slightly easier to define.
Yeah.
Because people feel it directly. But with verbal, I think this is the most unrecognized sexual violence. For example, catcalling, because it's a very slippery slope between compliments and actually harassment.
Okay.
Exactly. So that's the very, to understand catcalling, I think it's a very core step into preventing sexual harassment at the very basic.
Yeah,
So gentlemen, not doing catcalling is one of the best thing a man can do.
At the very least.
That's
At the very least.
But I mean, in a marriage situation, for example, what would possibly happen when it comes to verbal violence?
Yeah.
Let's, for example, from a husband to a wife, I don't know, repressing in some kind of a verbally to her.
Because having argumentations in marriage is common, right? So what constitutes verbal violence?
Well, it's very difficult to just define it in a very simple terms. But if I may use an example, trying to force or to coerce your spouse into having sexual intercourse can also be sexual harassment or violence. Because at the very core, it needs to be consensual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe belittling, like belittling woman's role
can also do
in
that,
a household
That
is also a
can
verbal
also be
violence,
Sure,
right?
sure.
For example, like saying you are insignificant because you don't, you are not the breadwinner of the family. I'm the one that makes money for our family.
That's like-
belittling.
Yeah, psychological violence.
And it can go with other categories as well, not only in terms of, let's say, breadwinner or not, but maybe physically and other stuff as well.
Yeah, for example, saying that, you're not capable as being a mother.
Something like that.
As simple as that. Basically, the keyword is belittling.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Because when it comes to physical, I mean, you have a proof, right? When somebody slaps somebody, they have a proof. But when it comes to verbal, there has been no proof other than recording it when it happens.
Although some proofs are insignificant when it comes to dealing with law enforcers sometimes, right?
Yeah, true. All right, now let's go to the next question. What are some of the biggest legal gaps or challenges in addressing domestic as well as sexual violence against women in Indonesia? If you can point out some.
Legal gaps. I think between the enforcement and the acknowledgement of the people. We have the law set up. The law is, the protection is already set up by the law, but people don't know that those laws exist. I think it's easier to talk about it in Jakarta, for example, because it's the capital of the country.
Yeah.
But if we go, Indonesia is such a big country, if we go into a more rural area, then the knowledge of accessibility, reporting, then it becomes very further away.
Okay. Do you think that power relations also plays a role here? Because this data comes from Komnas Perlindungan Anak dan Perempuan, so the Protection Agency of Children and Women, saying that in 2023, actually the most sexual violence happened in our education bodies. Number one, it's in university level, and number two, at religion-based schools. Madrasas, right? So what they say, this Komnas Perempuan, Komnas Perlindungan Anak dan Perempuan, they argue that this is because of power relations between those in power, teachers, lecturers, or the supervisors of these madrasas, and the children that has no power at all. Does this play a role as well?
Yeah, I think so. It's in a close-knitted society, it's very difficult to report it because people don't have access. That's pretty much it. And it's also the very high social judgment among peers, from the peers.
Right.
Yeah, people feel pressured.
Yeah, and there has been this glorification on some kind of teachers or maybe leaders of some sort. All right, now what about the cultural or societal factors that perhaps could influence the legal system's response to cases of domestic or sexual violence?
I think it's very important that Indonesia try to do more campaign into raising awareness that being victims are not perpetrators.
True.
Because people think, most women, not most women, but many women think that being a victim is because of their faults.
Right.
So I think this is the first gap that we need to anticipate first, and to have people more aware that these actions are not okay.
Yeah, because there's a mixed feeling when you said there's an inclining numbers. Does
Right.
it mean that a lot of people are now reporting it?
Right.
Whereas before, nobody had the guts to do it, right?
Yeah, we can see it that way. One example.
Right. So we've got the regulations and laws in place to protect women and children, right, against violence. But what can legal advocates like yourself and the public do to push for the implementation in protecting women and children even more?
I think Komnas Perempuan has done a lot of awareness raising campaigns. I personally, as an advocate, we do social responsibility activities as well into raising awareness in the rural areas. So,
Specifically in rural areas.
yeah, because I think that's the least accessibility that people have. So just the first step is to know that some acts are not okay.
Okay.
And it's okay to not feel okay.
And it's done in school settings or at the
Community settings.
community
Yeah,
settings?
community settings.
Was there any case that really rocked you to the core?
Wow.
Wow, that's quite a lot of cases, to be
Really?
honest.
What's the most notable one that you couldn't sleep because of?
Well, well, there was a case where I was not involved in, but a friend of mine involved in, a human rights activist.
Okay.
And she was handling this case that this woman is forced into a marriage, and then, yeah, by their family, by her family.
Wow.
So she had no ways of reporting, no ways of consoling, and she is subjected into a situation where she has to accept. So I think this happens a lot more than we
I
thought.
understand. I mean, she feels obliged to follow what the orders of the
Yeah.
family, mom and dad
Yeah,
said to her.
yeah.
All right. If you want to report if something happened to women in a domestic setting, in a relationship or in a marriage setting, where do we report?
Well, the police has already had the Directorate for the Protection of Women, PPA, Women and Children. So we can definitely go there. Or we can also go to Komnas Perempuan, for example, so that you can have assistance in knowing what to do. Because most of the time, victims don't know what to do. Maybe they know, but they don't know what to do in reality. They just traumatized.
Right. But first thing first is trying, a place that is safe for you.
Safe refuge.
Be it with friends or family
Yeah.
that, is in support of you, right? But if victims want to contact you, maybe after watching this talk show, they want to contact you directly and seek counsel,
Sure.
what should they do?
Well,
Go to Instagram,
Yeah,
or go to my website.
Go ahead. I mean, like, why are you?
Yeah, you can
stunned?
promote yourself, definitely.
because it's very important for women to understand the legal
Right.
of it. Not only how to do it, but I mean legally what they need to understand. They need to.
yeah, I would be happy to answer any questions. We do have, my office has an Instagram page, paramitalaw.com. So feel free to go to the Instagram page and we can go from there.
Yeah, I would say going to paramita.law.com or maybe to Komnas Perempuan, LBH Apik
Yeah, for
would be
sure.
the best options for women to go first, right? Because sometimes there are many criticisms. Again, their reports would, come to deaf ears when it comes to reporting it to the police. So maybe LBH Apik or Komnas Perempuan or yourself would be the first.
Paramita.
At the very least, we would know where to direct your complaints and
Yeah.
cases.
And maybe you can help with
For
you know,
sure.
reporting it to the authorities, right?
Sure.
So,
Well, thank
Paramita,
you.
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
doing the advocacy here in
Thank you.
Australia. From
I think we need to talk about this much
More
more in our show, right?
Yeah, I'm thankful that this topic is raised in the segment.
Yes, so
Thank
come
you.
again to See Today. And
Sure.
thank you. one more
Thank
time.
you.
All right, and See Today will still continue with See the Stories, but that's going to be after the break, so stay tuned.